The Secrets of Middle-earth is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, where we will discuss the hidden themes and deeper layers found in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, whether in his writings or in any of the media derived from them. And today we're discussing the first 2 episodes of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Kaitlyn Facista. Hey, Kaitlyn.
Hi.
Thomas Salerno. Hey, Thomas.
Hey there, Dom.
And Thomas Sanjurjo. Hey, Thomas.
It's good to be here, Dom.
All right. Folks, be sure to follow The Secrets of Middle-earth in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, any podcast directory, or any podcast app. You'll also find us on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or on Twitter, where we're at SQPN, or on Instagram, where we're at StarQuest Network. So, as I mentioned up front, we're going to be discussing the first 2 episodes of the new Rings of Power TV show, streaming series. I get those mixed up. I'm old. So they are titled A Shadow of the Past and Adrift. So let me give a recap of what happens in these first 2 episodes. We are introduced to Galadriel as a little girl in Valinor who endures bullies but is comforted by her brother Finrod. And we learn about the 2 trees, Morgoth, and the War of the Silmarils in abbreviated form. And then we're off to Galadriel's quest to avenge her brother's death by hunting down Sauron, who everyone else thinks is dead. When she returns from an unsuccessful hunt, her friend Elrond convinces her to accept the gift of the High King Gil-galad to return to the Undying Lands in the West, while he finally declares the War of the Silmarils ended. She accepts at first, reluctantly, but as the boat is just approaching the point of no return, she jumps in the ocean to swim back, only to encounter some shipwrecked men, among whom is Halbrand. Meanwhile, down in the Southlands, elves are continuing to guard the descendants of the men who had thrown in their support to Morgoth in the war. One elf, Arondir, has fallen in love with the human healer Bronwyn. He's told it's time to ship out, the war's over, but he's reluctant to leave her, plus there's some weird things going on. Elsewhere, a tribe of Harfoots, the proto-hobbits, are hiding from men, but they detect some bad omens in the sky. One Harfoot, Nori, stumbles upon a man who has fallen from the sky in a meteor, and the man cannot communicate with her, yet he has power. Elrond, meanwhile, has been sent to Eregion to help Celebrimbor the Smith with a big new project. I think I know what it is. And Elrond has the idea to enlist the help of the dwarves of Khazad-dûm and his friend Prince Durin, but Durin's holding a grudge, and he's also keeping a secret along with his dad from the elves. The end. So lots of details. I glided over there, but that's the basic what happens. So this is that we finally got it after all this time, all this anticipation, all this talk. What's your overall first impression, Thomas Salerno? What's your overall first impression of these first 2?
Okay, so, and I tried to go into this as open-minded as possible because I know there's been a ton of anticipation, and I'm a huge lore guy. I love everything to be accurate and precise, but I knew I wasn't going to get that. So I just kind of went in and, where's this show going to take me? And my overall first impression was, I was entertained, but I was really underwhelmed. I guess my short summary of it is surely the most elaborate and most expensive Tolkien fan fiction ever created. I was entertained. I'm intrigued by a few of the new characters, but I'm really unsure about where things are going to go. I feel a bit disoriented because there's so much new stuff, and I'm sure we'll get into that as we go along.
Yes, that's a good way to start. Thomas and Sanjurjo, what was your overall big impression?
It's tough. I liked them. I liked the episodes. I thought they were really good. I agree with Thomas that they're it feels like they're stuffing a lot of sausage into very little casing, and which is weird because they've got like 5 seasons plotted of this, right? So we've got 40 hours worth of tape that we're going to be watching of this happening. So for them to be kind of like cramming everything into this front loading portion of it seems really, really interesting. I like the grand nature of it, but at the same time, I think it's kind of suffering from trying to tell too much backstory all at once. And so I would have liked it to slow up on that backstory portion of it and have given us a little more room to breathe in the individual tales first, and then added some of that backstory as we went along.
Yeah. And then bring in the backstory over time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Kaitlyn, how about you?
I think disorienting is the perfect word for it, especially coming in. If you do know a lot of Tolkien, it's very confusing because you can be looking in the book and you know where you are and you have a firm footing. But then as soon as you get into the show with the time compression and all of the changes that they're making, it can be hard to know, exactly what's going on. So I think a little disorienting, but it is really beautiful. It's an entertaining story, I think. It does seem like the buildup is going a little bit slowly, which is interesting because, the first episode covered thousands of years of material, and yet it still was a little bit slow. But it also seems like they have 20 plus main characters for season 1. Maybe that was a little bit overambitious of them. So many different realms that you have to get acquainted with, so many different characters, canon characters and invented characters. And I think for the average TV viewer, it probably seems a little bit overwhelming. And then for the average ultra Tolkien fan like us, it's a little bit underwhelming because we already know so much of this, and then there's certain things that they can't include because of the rights, and then those are missing, and it's just kind of a bit of a mess right now, but I'm still very excited to see how it all unfolds.
So for my part, I didn't even reread any of the writing about this period in the run up. I didn't want to be, but that's not right. They're not there then. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to approach it on its own terms. They wisely chose an era in which not much had been done at all. That Tolkien had written much about. There is stuff that in his writing about this period of time, but it's among the least developed of materials in the whole grand scheme of things. So it means that when they make changes or they add things, it's not as big of a deal as if, you did, Fëanor's, a half sister who, made the seventh Cimmerel. So, you know what I mean? Like they add some whole another thing in that, or have Arwen at Helm's Deep. So that's a deep cut for those of you who know the extended editions. But I will say, it is surely the most beautiful fantasy movie or TV show I've ever seen. I just love the settings. I love seeing Lindon and the city in Eregion, whose name I can't pronounce, but and Khazad-dûm, and just to see these places that in the Lord of the Rings are diminished or destroyed in the case of Khazad-dûm, Moria, and so to see these, it was awesome. I love that part. But the overall feel, I saw some people say things like it feels like wonderful fantasy. It doesn't feel very Tolkien-esque, and maybe we can get into that further in this episode, but also throughout as we discuss it, what that might mean. And to that end, I kind of want to bring up, what themes do you see developing? Is in just the first 2 episodes? What themes are they laying out for us? Themes of hope. Themes of fear, or, what themes are we seeing, and do they feel Tolkien-esque to you? What do y'all think?
I think the division of the races is interesting, and the way that they're going about exploring that is very cool. And I'm talking about the Tolkien races, not the not some of the other issues with actual actors or anything like that. But you know, like the differences between the dwarves and the elves and the humans. It's really neat because you can clearly see, first off, which group any of the given characters belongs to. And it's subtle enough that it's not like they just threw a whole bunch of dirt on the humans and said, we're done. You know, but that the elves look like elves and the men look like men and the Harfoots look like Harfoots. Like it looks like what you would expect them to be sort of at this time period in the history of Middle Earth. And I like that. I think that's a really interesting theme to discover. You know, the dwarves too very clearly look like dwarves. And it's good for them to be like kind of diving into that and really embracing it. And then also expanding on why is it that dwarves hate elves? You know, like what is it that, you know, we get that sense in Lord of the Rings when there's like the animosity between Gimli and Legolas that then becomes a friendship, but it starts off as an animosity. And we don't know exactly why that is. It's just assumed. And this is kind of filling in those holes, which is nice.
Mm. How about you, Kaitlyn or Thomas Salerno? Thoughts on what deeper themes they're pulling out so far?
They're definitely going with a lot of light versus dark and kind of especially in the conversation with Finrod and Galadriel, there's a lot of discernment kind of conversation of reaching out to touch the darkness, knowing which path to take kind of thing, which I like that because it almost reminds me of Aragorn struggling throughout Lord of the Rings to figure out, you know, what path he's going to take. I'm not sure how that works for elves exactly. It's a little bit different for them, I would say, but still, I mean, every person has to make their own choices and decide, you know, what they're going to do with their life. Especially when you are from the House of Finwë. But there's that. And I can also see a lot of tension between the different races, which I think is kind of fun to see play out, like you said, where the men don't like the elves and then the dwarves don't like the elves. Kind of everyone's mad at the elves right now where we're starting. So it's been fun. It does feel pretty Tolkienian with especially the light versus darkness thing so far, at least. But I also feel like it's not, it feels like it's too soon to tell, really. Yeah. Even though we've seen 2 hours, like there's so much more coming that I don't know. It's hard to make like a judgment on whether or not this feels like Tolkien yet.
Okay. Thomas?
Yeah, I definitely like the sort of theme or mood of kind of looming menace,
right?
Where it's like, you know, Sauron's out there somewhere. We all know this, but it's like, where is he exactly? You know, but you know, most people just think he's destroyed, but still, there's kind of this, I don't know, this undercurrent of like something's not right. We see that in a little bit of like some of, you know, there's a bit of heavy-handed symbolism with like some leaves dying and some other like, you know, animals being, you know, poisoned and such. Yeah, the cow. But there is, you know, like I like this sort of hidden menace. It almost reminds me, and I don't think they used this as inspiration, but it kind of reminds me of The New Shadow, Tolkien's aborted sequel to The Lord of the Rings, where there's this really heavy air of menace, like not all is right in the world and something evil is lurking out there. I think that'll be interesting to explore. I definitely think in terms of the way the production design and the music, like really reinforce, it was really, I think, calling back to the Jackson films and makes you feel kind of familiar, like you're in this world again. I know they filmed in New Zealand again for some of it, but yeah, I just felt at the same time, I felt there was something missing. It didn't feel quite like Tolkien. To me, it felt more like one of his many imitators from the 70s and 80s. It felt very kind of generic high fantasy, trying to do Tolkien, but not him exactly. It was missing something that I can't quite place yet.
I don't want to dispute that, but I just want to throw it out there. Is it that it doesn't feel like Tolkien or doesn't feel like Jackson? That's
a good point.
For my own self, I found myself comparing it to Jackson's Lord of the Rings and wondering, and it's like, oh, it's not quite well, but there's nothing that says that Jackson has to be the canon per se. Right. So, but you may be onto something there, I think.
Yeah, I do think that that's part of it, but just as someone who listens to the audiobooks at least once a year, and I love to immerse myself in Middle Earth, something feels off. I don't think it's going to completely derail the show or anything. To me, it just feels, it like I said at the beginning, it kind of felt a little bit like fan fiction.
Okay.
Well, it kind of is.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is, and I think
fully licensed and very, very expensive and approved by the Tolkien estate fan fiction.
Right.
Yeah. Well, even if you go to the various wikis about Tolkien stuff, they say it's non-canon. Like that's kind of the way it's presented, as non-canon.
Right.
Yeah. I think looking at it that way also allows you to have a much more enjoyable experience with the show, because you're not going to get mad about the changes as much when you remember that this is separate. It's like rooted in Tolkien, but it's separate. And that has allowed me to just relax a bit and enjoy the show a lot more.
It's in a parallel universe. It's the Tolkien multiverse. Okay. Yeah.
This is the multiverse where there's no Celeborn.
Yes, we're definitely talking about that, by the way.
It's an Elseworld, as we would say in DC Comics.
Yes. So let's get into the story itself. We have this opening scene of Galadriel as a girl in Valinor. Again, to see the two trees there. She's being bullied by these other kids, so it's not exactly heaven then. But I don't think Tolkien wrote it as heaven. It's just a beautiful place. I mean, the kinslaying happens, which doesn't in this. But before we get to that, we have. Was it Finrod who tells her the most important truths are often simple?
Yeah.
And I kind of like that, because I think that's setting the tone for the series, because, as often as people are in these two episodes, people telling Galadriel, Sauron's dead, just move on. It's whatever. And she clings to this simple truth that unless you see the body, he's not dead, and and we know she's right. And that's one of the beauties of this, is we all, as most of the people watching this, I dare say probably 80% know Sauron ain't dead, and she's right. And so I kind of feel like that line up front was the showrunners saying this, put a pin in this. This is important.
Yeah. I think I had a lot of trouble with the lead up of Galadriel jumping off the boat. Like, it bothered me, and it bothered me primarily because I felt like I love the conviction that she has, but I feel like there was something missing in the elf story here, because the move to go back to Valinor is supposed to be one of grief and of necessity and of personal conviction to need to leave. And it felt like it was the king sending off his
it's a reward
troublesome. Well, no, it felt like he was sending off her. It was a reward for some of the warriors, yes, but then for her it was sending her off. It's like, let's get rid of her, because send her back so that she's not a problem anymore. And I feel like it could have been done a lot better if they had set everything else the same. And then when she was at the tower trying to discover proof that Sauron was still around, she didn't find any. And then when she came back to her troop, they all sang a hymn together. And then she felt not necessarily perfectly at peace, but enough that her mission was done. And then lead everything up the same way until that moment on the boat when they take the dagger from her and something doesn't feel right. And then she has a turn to come back. Like, she's convicted at that point of that that truth of where, which light am I looking at and which light is the important one. And I feel like it would have been a lot more powerful if they had kind of just made that slight little shift. And, so in my head, that's canon now. That's the way I'm thinking about the rest of the series at this point.
I like that a lot better. Yeah. They should hire you.
So at this point, we get a condensed. This is what happens in the first age. This is the Silmarillion, basically. And I find very interesting, there is no mention of the Silmarils at this point. No mention of the kinslaying. It is very simply, Morgoth is a guy who killed the trees, and we went out to kill him back, to defeat him. And that's kind of all they really say about the first age, which I think is interesting, because the kinslaying and the Silmarils, I mean, that's everything about the first age. Yeah. It changes who Galadriel is if she doesn't take the oath.
One thing about that I thought was kind of interesting is that this is being told from Galadriel's perspective. And so maybe it almost reminds me of in the Silmarillion when she's telling Melion about how they got to Middle Earth and she's leaving out all of the important details.
Right.
It would be cool if they sort of made her an unreliable narrator, but I don't think that's where they're going with it. But
right.
It would be awesome, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. There's such a sense of PTSD to her that I wouldn't be surprised if they do end up taking sort of an unreliable narrator angle.
Interesting.
That would be really cool.
Yeah. That someone later on confronts her with the truth of, don't forget, you conveniently left out, that someone says to her this bad stuff. Because the Silmarils do get mentioned in the second episode, but not in the first. So I thought that was interesting. We get a really interesting aside on the downsides of immortality. The downside is that you have to live on when so many others have died. And you have to live with what happened or what you didn't accomplish or whatever. So
I liked how they said in the beginning the elves had no word for death, but now we have many words for death. And Tolkien being such a guy about languages, that felt very authentic to me.
I loved that line.
I wrote that down. That was a good line. So Morgoth is defeated. We don't get to see any of that, which is kind of, maybe we'll get to see the Morgoth has to be bigger than Sauron. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure how we would do that. But we have that scene, the battle, the Daggerlath. Where the pile of the helmets, that was very, Finrod vows to hunt down Sauron, but was killed by him. So Galadriel takes the oath to hunt Sauron, to avenge her brother. And so let's talk a bit about this Galadriel, because she's younger than the Galadriel we know of the Lord of the Rings, and a little more active, which I don't think is a bad thing given she's 6,000 years younger. So maybe she's, and elves have begun to fade by the third age, and they're still quite vibrant. They're still quite substantial in a sense, but some things I'm having trouble with is I think we mentioned earlier, Galadriel as subservient to Gil-galad. It's hard to reconcile with her being the daughter of Finarfin, granddaughter of Finwë and Olwë. She was in Tolkien in his writings of this era. She was herself the Lord, Celeborn and her were the Lord and Lady of Eregion first. They founded the kingdom of Eregion. She's not just some sword wielder.
Right. It felt a little bit weird to see everyone disrespecting her so much. I was just like, excuse you, don't you know who you're talking to?
Do you know who you're talking to?
This is Galadriel here.
So then we meet Elrond, a much younger Elrond. Not much is said about him. There is, although the first time we see him, we're clearly told you're half elf and therefore you're not as good as the rest of us. So, just so you know where you stand with things.
Which is insane because his father essentially saved the world,
right.
Arendelle,
Yeah. I was gonna say, what he should just do is just point and go, you see that? The sun? Yeah, that's my dad. I mean, just to remind you where I stand with things. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is kind of weird. Like, I don't necessarily think that's how the elves thought of Elrond. But
I like that he's Gil-galad's speechwriter.
Yeah, you can tell that.
I thought that was funny. It was totally out of left field, but I actually kind of enjoyed that.
Yep. And Kaitlyn, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was saying, I guess I interpreted that part when they were like elf lords only. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
I just assumed that was because he was supposed to be like younger. I didn't take that as a half elven thing. I assume that they're setting him up to be this herald. He's Herald Elrond right now. I assume that they want to show his growth into Lord Elrond. It seems like they're setting everyone like 5 paces back from where they should be, from what we know, so that we can have some kind of dynamic storyline. But it's kind of jarring at first to see them so different from where we would think they would be.
He's Gil-galad's shield bearer at the Battle of the Last Alliance, right? I think that's there's
yes, yeah,
I believe so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it fits to where. So here's the thing, and this is a discussion we got in at my house about like what an elf is, right? So you have to kind of drop back and think about it's very easy to hand wave the first age when you're Tolkien and you've written the third age, and that's all that really matters story wise. And so you can just kind of write sort of a Bible about the first age, right? And then the second age gets completely ignored, but there's thousands of years there, and we're to assume that elves never change. But we do see growth in the elves even in the third age. So you see Elrond kind of change who he is and develop into the final person that he becomes, the final elf that he becomes at the end of the series. And even Galadriel changes because she's affected by Gimli's response to her and the way that he interacts with her, and it changes her perspective on dwarves even that late in her life as an elf. So these beings that live thousands and thousands and thousands of years, they still have to grow somehow. And so for them to tell an effective story, they really did have to kind of drop that constant immortal sense. But they did maintain it a little bit too, like in the second episode when they go into the relationship between Elrond and the dwarf
Durin.
Durin. So the relationship between them, and my kids we've talked about this too, like when we're making Lord of the Rings or we're making Dungeons and Dragons characters, and we talk about like the relative ages of all of the different characters. And my son one time, he just latched onto this idea that an elf, a dwarf is like a dog. And so they're going to live for so long. And it's interesting to think about that, because then that provides all sorts of other implications when you get into a fight and you're an elf and you're fighting against another elf and your teammates are all, other races that are essentially like a bunch of animals to you. They're like your pets. Who are you going to prefer trying to prevent damage to? You're going to prefer the other being that's like you, where it's like, okay, yes, I don't want you to keep doing the evil thing that you're doing or that I'm trying to stop you from, but at the same time, I'm not going to let these things that are with me rip you apart because they don't understand how long lived you are and the life so it puts you on a different level. And it's really interesting to kind of see those things developing simultaneously. Like we've taken them back so that we have some room for growth, but at the same time, they're still very otherworldly.
They're still elves.
Right.
Yeah. I suppose you kind of touched on something here. I was going to bring up later. We'll bring it up now so I don't forget it. Durin's grudge that it's been 20 years, I found hard to take because dwarves live for hundreds of years. Like 20 years to a dwarf is nothing. So the fact that he like had this grudge because I haven't heard from you in 20 years, I don't know. I felt like it ignores the fact that dwarves are not like men, like where 20 years is everything.
Did he say 20 or 200?
He said 20.
20.
Yeah, it should have been like 60 years. Maybe that would have been.
Yeah.
Okay. I heard him say 200, so it didn't bother me as much.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, he's like, it's been 20 years. And then Elrond goes, oh, only 20 years? And Durin is like, yeah, 20. Like, you can.
I got married, had kids. Yeah.
Exchange. Yeah, I thought that exchange is interesting because to Elrond, he's like, oh, only 20 years, no big deal. But from Durin's perspective, that was a long time.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't completely make sense.
Yeah. So that was one of the small things I just felt like, they kind of missed on. So we switch from Galadriel's story at this point to the Harfoots. We get to see them, and they're the precursors to hobbits. They're one of the tribes of halflings. So there's actually a bunch of different kinds of halflings, the Stores, the Harfoots, and these are the Harfoots. They're considered dangerous by men, and I love that they are so good at hiding, which is how Tolkien described them. Like whenever human, the big folk are around, they just disappear. They're like they cover everything and it's gone. And I love that little sequence where they uncover themselves. That was really nice.
Yeah, that was great. Although their little village kind of reminded me of the halfling village from Willow. So something about it, I was like, this kind of looks like the Willow village. But otherwise, that was great. I love how they disguise everything to look natural. Like the terrain around them, and I like that they're migratory because they definitely talk about that in the appendices. Yeah, I thought they were great as proto-hobbits.
Well, in fact, they're basically portrayed here as like the Irish travelers. If you're familiar with them, they're Irish travelers are like the gypsies in Ireland. They're people who are migratory. They're looked down upon by others. They are seen to be as lower class, and treated that way oftentimes. And so I think that's one of the reasons why they chose them to have these sort of country Irish accents. That's what it really is. It's a country Irish accent. And I know some Irish people were kind of upset. Like the Irish Times had a editorial that was very upset that we portrayed the country bumpkins as Irish. But they're really, what they're doing is a shorthand for Irish traveler. As soon as you see this, you get a sense like they don't have to explain who they are. It kind of comes across. So I kind of like that. They have young Nori is the young elf Harfoot, who we very quickly you'll see her as a bit of a rebel. She pushes the boundaries because we're told Harfoots always stay together. Nobody goes off alone, and they have no worries in life. And so clearly Nori is going to go off alone.
Yeah.
So we get an extended sequence with that, and we start to get also the hints of things are not right in the world. The lore master, the sort of the shaman or of what have you. I forget the character name.
Sadik.
Thank you.
Sadik. Yeah.
Seeing omens, as well as the other women in the traveling band. Seeing the omens in the sky, and that sort of thing. So we're setting them up. Oh, and also there's a warg, not because it didn't look like a wolf. This was a monstrous, more monstrous creature.
Mm-hmm.
So like a warg. So we get introduced to the Harfoots.
One point about the Harfoot music.
The Harfoot music.
Their village music sounded something like straight out of like town music from Legend of Zelda. It hit me immediately. I'm like, that, are we in Kakariko Village or something? And like, this is exactly what this sounds like. I'm like, but nice. Bear McCreary, the composer, must be a fan because it was too much to have been a coincidence, I thought.
Yeah, I also love here that they show that that a written tradition is part of who the hobbits are, and because the whole thing about the hobbits is the hobbits wrote the Lord of the Rings. That's Bilbo and Frodo together wrote the Lord of the Rings. So to show that that's a very long history of those peoples to have a written record of what's going on and observing the world around them was really good.
So we jump back from the Harfoots to Galadriel. We're told that she's basically defying Gil-galad with her insistence on revenge against Sauron. Gil-galad is meanwhile in denial. Without doubt, the days of war are over, he says. Dewey wins. So, I write here, what keeps the elves from leaving for all the elves from leaving for the Undying Lands? Why are they here? Why did they stay? And, we have to recall that, as Tolkien wrote, they have an attachment to this world. They have an attachment to Middle Earth and to the places, and they don't want to leave them. That's their home. They've settled here. But it's only, like you said, Thomas, that when they get to the point of grief and fading and those sorts of things, that they must leave. Whereas Galadriel, she should not be given this, like, she shouldn't be going on the ship. The whole reason Galadriel can't go back is the oath. She made the oath along with her brothers, and she's not allowed to go back. And in fact, she only gets to go back at the end of the Lord of Rings because she forgoes the temptation to take the ring from Frodo. And that is what gives her permission to go back. So that whole sequence of her going, being given the gift to go back to the Undying Lands doesn't really fit with everything else. This was, something that came up for me anyway.
It just felt bizarre. It felt like he was almost like a Willy Wonka giving out golden tickets.
Right?
Yeah.
It just was, I did not really enjoy that element of the plot.
Yeah.
Right.
My wife looked at it and she said, it's almost like he's retiring, with air quotes, the soldiers, and it just sat wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta say, one thing I did like was the memorial glade that where she was talking about Elrond, where the likenesses of the dead are formed into the living trees. I don't think it's so much carved as just like the elven magic forming their likenesses in it. So I kind of like that.
Did you see the one that looked like Luthien?
And Huan. Yeah.
Oh.
That one was very exciting because I'm pretty sure that's who it's supposed to be. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I need to rewatch that scene because
you need to go back and watch it.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a fun little. I liked that they threw that in for the big Tolkien nerds.
Yes. Mm-hmm. She says at this point, "You have not seen what I have seen." Like, there's that great line from the trailer, like, "You have not seen what I have seen. Evil sleeps and waits, and in our moment of complacency, it blinds us." Another great line, which I think is a thematic, because it's true, right? When we become complacent about the existence of evil in the world, in the lives around us, it that's when it leaps out. It gets us, like a spider in the dark, like Ungoliant, So I like that they're developing this theme throughout, and I hope to see where it goes with that.
It's very Tolkien too. That's a very good Tolkien theme.
Yes, it is. So now we have the Southlands, where, like I mentioned before, the men are under the control of the elves because they'd thrown in the future. Is it really future Mordor?
I think so.
Before Door.
Before Door.
Before Door. That's great. Because, like they show Mordor on the map and you can kind of see like the shape of the mountains is right. Yeah.
All of this land would become the blasted plain.
Yeah.
That's what I'm very excited to see.
Yeah, same.
Wow. That changes a lot of my thinking about that, because they're digging underneath. That's one of the things that actually came up is orcs have not been seen in hundreds of years. They're thought to be extinct. And so having them emerge, so they're tunneling underneath, they're poisoning the land. Oh, okay. Yeah. So there's an interesting theme of the prejudice against the men by the elves, but because they are the descendants of those who had betrayed the elves, in a sense. And it's another theme of generational guilt. Is it just to impute generational guilt upon people like this? For the elves, it's yesterday. For these people, it's like, I'm guilty because my, George Washington, the guy who served under George Washington, did something wrong or older,
Well, and since we're on a Catholic podcast here, let's talk about original sin and how that plays into the concepts of the guilt we should have, as it relates to original sin. And I think that's it's one of those things that we always have to walk the line in discussing our religion about how much we are responsible for, how much we should feel guilt for that, and how much we are also responsible for our own sin. And it's not just that we inherited it, but that, we engage in it as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's tricky because when we talk about original sin, it is not, an active guilt for a thing we've done. It is the brokenness within us that is passed on from parent to child, an unbroken line from Adam and Eve, that puts us in a sinful state, in a broken state in which sin is possible. And I mean, it's true because then we see it in Bronwyn's son, don't we? The fact is the elves aren't wrong, that there is still, and not only Bronwyn's son, but the other guy from the inn, the tavern, they are still susceptible to that temptation and to the evil that their ancestors had engaged in. So it's still in among them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the physical remnants of the evil are still there when he just goes and, he's just like in a random shed, lifts up one floorboard, and there's suddenly a sword bearing the mark of Sauron. Like, it's almost like there's these things just laying all over the place. So it almost makes me feel like it wasn't supposed to be that long ago. But with the time compression, it's kind of confusing.
Right.
Like, the sword is not even buried a foot deep in the ground.
Yeah, that confused me because they never seemed to explain how him and his friend knew that was there.
So I got the sense that there are people who still maintain this connection to the rebellion, the throwing themselves in with Morgoth. There are still among them people who have those sympathies, and they've kept these relics as symbols of that. So just like you might have people in Christian lands, like in say in the British Isles, who they may be ostensibly Christian, but they're also hidden druids, still practicing some of that stuff passed down from generation to generation in the woods and holding on to the paganism as well. And I kind of feel like this is one of those relics that, they knew someone had held. And so Bronwyn's son brought this other guy's, hey, it was almost like someone else had shown me this. Let me show it to you. And that sort of thing. That's what I got out of it.
I'm very curious to know whose barn that was, and if we're going to find out the answer to that question.
Yes, one of those people heading to the tower for safety. So that also brings us to Arondir in Bronwyn, and Arondir's boss tells him, look, I know you've, or his coworker, I know you've got this thing for this woman. Look, there's only ever been 2 human elf pairings ever. And,
look how they both turned out.
It never works out. And I'm sitting there going, well, yeah, there's only ever been 2, so it should not be happening here between random elf dude and random woman dude.
Right.
Dude.
I love that they threw that in. Like, they recognize that this is not right. Like, this should not be here.
Yes. On the other hand, I kind of like the longing from a distance. Neither one actually comes out and says anything. There's sort of that classical, we are expressing our feelings in a way that no one actually has to acknowledge that we've actually done it, so we can still pretend.
Right. Yeah, they have the little dialogue over the Alpharin seeds.
Yes.
Which I liked because those become the Evermind, Symbolmuna flowers that the Rohirrim use on the graves of the dead.
Right.
Which was a nice little nod. I liked that.
Yep.
Symbolism, maybe.
I also appreciated the way that they were kind of like their whole romance was very like Jane Austen kind of like, our hands brushed against each other and now everyone's blushing. Like, on a lot of modern TV shows, you find out 2 characters like each other and then things go from 0 to 60 and you're so I really did appreciate how it was very like slow moving and subtle. I thought that was nice. I actually didn't hate it as much as I thought I would.
It is as opposite of Game of Thrones as you could possibly be.
I loved it.
And I think that may be
so
intentional.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I hope so. And I hope they keep it up.
Yes.
It better stay that way.
Yes, please. then we have an extended series of circumstances having to do with the suspicion. The elves, the garrison of elves is leaving. He becomes a deserter. And we have the bad things that are happening. The other village where some bad things. So the cow that's diseased and actually is giving this black bile instead of milk, and just this awful. That was pretty yuck. These awful things. I'm like, wash your hand, and that's what he's getting his hand. Like, dude, like, where you going?
Yeah,
he didn't wash his hand. I mean, he's an elf. He's not going to get sick, but come on. And then we have the tunnels. And those very intense scenes of like crawling through tunnels and having things chase you, and whatever it is that grabbed him in the dark, which we assume is our orcs. But I'm guessing we're not done with Irondeer yet. I'm gonna guess he's not gone.
I like how we're building up the kind of the vermin aspect of orcs, which even in the Jackson films we really didn't get a lot of. Like some of the still shots we've seen of orcs, they look very rodent-like, or like, and they dig tunnels underground like rats or grubs or something. I think that's a great way to distinguish them from Peter Jackson's orcs or other orcs that we've seen in fantasy. That these are really disgusting vermin-like creatures.
Right.
They need to be careful bringing them out in the daylight, though, because that's a no-no. And I know they were inside during the day when the one came up into the house to try and capture Bronwyn and her son. But at the same time, they shouldn't be participating in anything daylight related.
Right. At least at this point. Right. Yeah. Because those were developments. Those were bred for that sort of thing later on. Yeah. And so we have that scene where that's come up inside the house and it's attacking her. Now, I was talking to my nephew about this, and he was like, "Why did she look at the door to run out and then run into the cabinet?" And I said, "You're not a parent. Her son was in that cabinet. She's not leaving while he's still in there."
Well,
Bingo.
what got to me was the fact that she even considered leaving her son. To me, I was like, excuse me? Like he's like, "Mom, run." Like, wouldn't you just grab him and run together?
Right.
I thought that was so bizarre. And maybe whoever wrote that scene doesn't have any children, because I don't know. Maybe my instincts would kick in. I don't know. I don't know what I'd do in that situation if there was an orc in my house, but I just can't imagine ever even running towards the door was bizarre to me.
Yeah. But a good fight scene, like a good action scene in there. I mean, it was compelling and believable. I really like the fact that she goes back to the tavern and smacks the head of the orc down and goes, "Now do you believe me?"
Right.
Yeah. That was a great scene.
Yeah, that was good. Meanwhile, Gil back in Linden, Elrond is sent to go work with Celebrimbor. And we know Celebrimbor is the one who forges the rings, the three rings, the elven rings. He works with Sauron. Sauron will show up, at least in Tolkien's work, the writings. He shows up and ingratiates himself and pretends to be the good guy, and I'm reformed, and works next to Celebrimbor and manages to pervert the work and take control of the rings. But this is well before that. And he's been sent to work with Celebrimbor to build something, a new forge, I guess is what he's building.
Yeah.
Which will be the forge for the rings.
That's what I got out of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He said it's a forge so special and so big that it could be as hot as dragon's breath and as pure as starlight, which I loved that little.
That was cool.
That was like a very Tolkien thing to say.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering if this is Mount Doom, if this is the creation of Mount Doom.
Or Barad-dûr.
No, I think this is built in Eregion, though. I think that's where he's building it.
Well, I don't know that we have everything. I don't know that we have the full story of it yet, and that's why I'm thinking that what we're going to get out of this is a forge. I'm assuming that the dwarves are going to push it somewhere else. Like they're going to say, well, it'd be better if we did, because the dwarves being called on, the dwarves are going to have an opinion about this.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of where things are going. And so as we're moving into the Southlands with the story, I think we're also going to be moving kind of focusing everything back down there. And it could be Barad-dûr.
Yeah, because they mention a tower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so somewhere in there, I think we're going to get I think we're going to have all of these pieces start to come together, which is
interesting.
I'm liking it. Like the more I'm thinking about what they're doing here is, there's just this kind of general sense of, well, Sauron came in and he saw Mount Doom and he said, that's where I'm going to go. And it's like, well, why? And I think we're going to put something there that's actually going to inspire him to move there and take over that area.
I suppose, you need if you're going to do this, you need a volcanic fire to be the source of heat. I guess. I thought, that they could be changing it, but I thought that Mount Doom was a secret place that that Sauron used to forge the One Ring away from where Celebrimbor was working. But
could be too.
But it might be that they're going in that direction though. So you might be right.
What did you all think about the way that Celebrimbor was like, and I need this done by spring, because that's very uncharacteristic for an elf to be rushing.
Haste.
So I have a theory.
Yeah, it seemed like, I need this done next Tuesday. Like what's the rush? I don't know. Like what do you think? What's going on there?
My theory is that Anatar is already there and has already been influencing Celebrimbor and is kind of the one behind the scenes pushing him to rush, because it's so weird for an elf to be like, I need this done right away. But I also don't understand how did Celebrimbor convince Gil-galad that this is of, singular importance? Like it's just a forge.
He might have told him he wants to forge the 3 magic rings.
Maybe.
He's got this idea for this new magic, which, given the thing that the elven rings apparently seem to do is to preserve.
Right.
And I think Gil-galad, and especially I think since we see him with that leaf that's corrupted, that he's concerned about preserving his kingdom and Eregion and, the elven lands. I wonder if that's part of it. But Anatar is the elvish name for Sauron, in case the listener doesn't know that yet.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's fine. That's fine. We'll all keep up. And I think that's an interesting idea. I think Anatar is somewhere in action behind the scenes.
Yeah,
and he's not someone else that we're about to talk with in a couple minutes. But yeah, I think it's. I also love the discussion of Fëanor's hammer. That was very interesting. Yeah.
That felt like another moment that they just threw in specifically for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the average person is like, what's a Silmaril? Because they didn't mention it in the prologue.
Right.
So, your average viewer has no idea what any of this conversation is about, but we're all very happy. I was really pleased.
What did you think of that story that he told about it? How it looking at the Silmaril almost converted Morgoth on the spot.
I love it.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the images of the Bible that I really take to heart, well, it's not biblical, it's extra biblical. I'll just say it's extra biblical. Is in the Apostles' Creed when it says that that Jesus descends into hell, and that there's this moment where he confronts Satan directly. And in my mind, what I'm seeing there is he's there and he pushes all of the evil away. And for a moment, the angel is returned to his glory. And that is the worst possible defeat that any being that's turned to evil could have.
Especially when it's irredeemable.
Returned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And then to have that pulled away when Jesus leaves, that to me is like, that is defeat right there. That is the moment of victory, the moment of victory of Christ. And so I love this image too of Morgoth seeing the Silmaril and nearly falling to the beauty of it. And it's his tear falling on it that brings him back to the reality of the fact that he is imperfect and will never be able to attain that.
That's it's devastating. Yeah.
And the fact that he's been searching all this time for, I think in the Silmarillion, it's called the flame imperishable. That great beauty that lies at the ground of all creation. And he's so envious of Eru Ilúvatar, the god figure in Tolkien's mythos, that he can create all things, but Morgoth can't create anything on his own. And so he covets things. He wants to possess them. So he wants to possess this light, this creative force and essence. And like you said, Thomas, to kind of see that, like to realize that he can't really have it because the Silmaril itself is just kind of a vessel for the greater light of the two trees, which he's destroyed.
Yeah.
It kind of I could see him having that moment, but then it just passing in like the blink of an eye and being like, nope, this is who I am.
Right.
Now I've committed to this. And
then you double down on it, as the evil, you double down on that evil. And that's exactly what happens.
Wow. Yeah. That, so I heard some criticism of it where it's like, that Elrond knows all this stuff. Why is he telling him this? Like, this is just exposition. But I think it's important exposition. I think it's not just a throwaway or even just a fan service. I think it's important because we're talking about good and evil here, fundamental good and evil, and the power of good. This is, I think, at the heart of Tolkien's messages, his themes, is the hope and good always overcomes. Hope and good has already won. The rest is just mop up, and that's I think that's at the heart of this, is that even Morgoth, even the personification of the devil in Tolkien's world, is almost converted, So yeah, that's
and it brings us back to that line from the very beginning of the episode. Nothing is evil in the beginning. Like not even Melkor was evil in the beginning.
Yep. So we have I'm just trying to think of what so we have Eregion, which is where Celebrimbor works. It's near Carathras, the big mountain. When you remember when they were trying to cross the mountain pass in Lord of the Rings, and Legolas walked across the top of the snow. Whereas, why didn't the elves at the beginning of this walk across the top of the snow in the forest ways? But never mind. We'll move on from that. And it's at the gates. It's right near the gates of Moria or Khazad-dûm. And so, if you got to have it built by next week, it's got to be done, or next spring. Elrond knows you need the dwarves to help build it. And so they go over, and I like the fact that Elrond's like, oh yeah, he loves us. We're friends. It's kind of like from Animal House. It's Otis. Hey, Otis, he loves us. Sorry, deep cut. And so they get there. So the elves are English, the Harfoots are Irish, and the dwarves, they've got to be Scottish. I just love, I love the fact that they're all like Scottish and they're rowdy. And Durin's got this grudge. And so we have this rock breaking contest, because what other kind of contest would a dwarf have, where you have to, who can last longest breaking rocks?
Well, because otherwise it would be a drinking contest, and the elf would win that hands down. Right. So
yes, we all know that.
I like that we kind of showed that like elves at this time are still really powerful. They have super strength, because like in the beginning, like Elrond is able to break these rocks also like it's nothing. And I appreciated that, because in the Silmarillion, we're told how much more powerful they are than in later ages. They still have that kind of youth of the world kind of, because they draw their strength from Arda, the universe. So like, I really appreciated that. This whole sequence was hands down my favorite part of the episode.
I love Khazad-dûm.
Great.
Khazad-dûm was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
What did you think of Durin's wife?
I really liked her.
Yeah, I think she's a really good character. I think she brings a lot of warmth to the whole dwarven realm, and it's fun because we've not seen a female dwarf before. So
yes,
it's fun getting to know her, and I really like the actress as well. I've gotten to hang out with her a couple times.
And they gave her some beard hair too. She had some of that little tuft stuff going on. That was good. Good touch.
Yes. I don't have a problem with that. I'm having the big long beard. I really like the whole resonating, the whole, the fact that they sing to resonate, and to, they can, it's almost like scanning the rock, or almost like Michelangelo, who could see the sculpture. He's going to carve away everything that is not the sculpture. And it's almost like that idea. I love that.
And then there was some beautiful foreshadowing in there too, where she mentioned not only do they find the things that they can dig, but they find the areas they shouldn't dig.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's, as we know with Casa Doom, that's a big issue.
Delve too far and too deep.
Someone's not going to do their resonating properly.
Or they're going to ignore the resonators and keep digging.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be,
they're going to need more.
The more of whatever is in the shiny thing in the box, which is like the Tarantino suitcase, briefcase, like you're not allowed to see what's in it, but theories. I think the most common one is
Arkenstone. Yeah.
You think?
Really?
I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Yeah.
I thought it was Mithril.
Yeah. I think it's Mithril.
Oh. Yeah. I don't think Mithril's shiny like that, though.
Yeah, like the fact that it was giving off a kind of radiance made me think, is this going to be some big dumb crystal like the Arkenstone? but I'm like, but it has to be Mithril, so I'm kind of divided on it.
I thought the Arkenstone was in the Lonely Mountain.
Well, Arkenstone is the heart of the mountain, so you can assume that any given mountain that they're digging in, they could find something similar.
Heart of it's like a more generic heart of a mountain,
right?
Not the heart of that particular mountain.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had just assumed Mithril. That was just my first guess, and I hadn't thought any more about it.
I still think Mithril in that, because that's discovered around this time in Tolkien's work.
That's true too.
And once they've got it, they're going to want a lot more of it, and they'll keep digging for it, and that's when they're going to wake up the bad guy down the bottom.
And there's that conversation towards the end of episode 2 where Durin is talking to his father about how they've kind of recently just discovered this thing, and they don't really want anyone else to know about it.
Right.
It seems.
Yeah. Yeah. I also like the discussion of the sapling that Elrond gave to Durin and how it grows in the dark. And he says, where there is love, it is never truly dark, which is it was a nice little line. I like that.
That was sweet.
And these are the same trees that we see in Lord of the Rings as well. And I think that's, kind of a cool tie-in to say that this is a gift from the elves to their close friends, that they give a cutting from this tree. And so you see that later on with Gondor, there's another of these trees present at Gondor.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Let's go back to, let's talk about Galadriel's swim. So she's almost, I like the visualization of the way opening to the Undying Lands. I mean, you're like, they're literally almost there. And there's a kind of ecstasy that the elves kind of go into when this is happening. It's kind of wild. And almost like they have to hold hands to as they're drawn in, like it's the Our Father or something. I don't know. Like,
the hand holding thing was a little bit weird where he's like, take my hand. I'm like, you're all on the same boat.
The boat's going
you're
there.
You're all going to get there.
Yeah, that was a little different. I was like,
a little goofy.
Is the boat not going? So that was interesting. But
are they like teleporting?
Yeah. But what do you think of the whole, I'm not going, I'm jumping in the ocean and swimming back across to, however far that is? I just seemed, because elves can drown. Yeah.
Like, how many miles is that?
Yeah.
But she could also swim that far. She's an elf. She could swim that far. Like, endurance is not an issue for them. I think that's.
Yeah.
I don't know. She could get lost in the ocean. She could get eaten by the sea worm.
Yeah.
She could get, any manner of things could happen.
I don't think she expected there to be a sea worm. I think the sea worm is like the dragons. No one knows that they're about yet. Yeah. That's they're kind of new. Yeah, she ends up with this shipwrecked group who immediately are suspicious of her, although I'm not sure why. Like, she's like a single elf swimming in the ocean. Like, what did she do? Crash your boat? Like, yeah. Anyway, and then everybody else dies, which was kind of wild. Like how quickly everybody else dies, and it's just her and Halbrand, this guy Halbrand, who's suspicious of her and suspicious in general. So I got to say something about this. I saw a preview, and from the preview, I got a feeling that I know why Celeborn isn't in this show right now, because it looks like they're making another human elf love interest story featuring, but this one featuring Galadriel. Which I think, I don't know. I think that would be really bad to do that, because that really changed that. I mean, we've changed Galadriel. That's a big change to Galadriel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be very, very angry.
That's a canon breaking change.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where it would be hard to continue watching the show if they did that. I don't know what I would do.
Yeah. Because
like I might be done, like it's such a bad idea that if they go that far, like I wouldn't trust them for anything anymore.
I mean, I suppose it could be an unrequited from afar sort of thing, which isn't as bad, but I think that's the best we can hope for because unless the trailer, the preview was way off, it was pretty clearly there was something going on.
Apparently, some of them were. I've read some reports that some of the promos, the advertising for it was a little misleading, and there were some issues internally about that as well.
Oh, good.
That's good. Yeah, they have been very. Whoever is cutting the trailers together is not the person who is writing the show.
Yeah,
for sure. But I could see it as Galadriel. She's a princess of the Noldor, like she's very beautiful, even Gimli kind of becomes obsessed with her. Mm-hmm. So I could see anyone, especially a mortal man, just totally falling for her and being all googly eyed over her. But if there's any kind of like reciprocation there, I think that would be going way too far.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
We already have an elf-human romance in this show, so I don't think they're going to do another.
There's only ever been 2. Well, now 4. Next week it'll be 8. Like, stop! Stop them before they do it again.
It's exceptionally rare for a reason.
Exactly. It should be rare. If it's not rare, it lessens the ones that have happened. So, all right, let's get to the big mystery. The bomb into the middle of the cannon. Meteor Man. So we have this meteor that falls out of the sky, this omen in the sky, as darkness sort of is descending on Linden. And Nori discovers him, and he's lying in the middle of the impact crater. He doesn't speak the common tongue. He's writing these weird, what they end up realizing are constellations. He has power, like magic power. And he doesn't necessarily seem to be all there all the time. So based purely on appearances, some people think it might be Gandalf, which would be a canon breaking because Gandalf doesn't show up until the Third Age and he comes on a boat, not riding a meteor in. Some people think he's Sauron because of, when he causes the fireflies to die and some of the more menacing aspects of him. What do y'all think?
His crater looked like the Eye of Sauron when they showed it from above. The crater when it was on fire.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem evil, but then
I think they want you to think that.
Yeah,
yes,
definitely.
I think they're trying to trick us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who do you think he is?
I think he's just going to be some unspecified wizard that maybe we won't ever get his name.
Okay.
That'll be kind of like a letdown, but
yeah, I think he's one of the Astari, the blue wizards. I think he's one of the blue wizards who we are told, came in the Second Age and passed out into the East, never to be heard from again. So it's a very convenient wizard to do whatever you want with, right? We've got this extra wizard laying around. You might as well throw him into the story and use him in some ways. But because at least I'm originally thinking, like, if it's Gandalf, I mean, this could show why he has such fondness for hobbits, because they kind of saved him. He was the first people he encountered in this land, that sort of thing. But it's not going to be Gandalf, because unless they've really, really messed with things, which it's entirely possible. What do you think about the whole, like, the fireflies dying bit? What was that about? Because some people say that's a sign of something bad, like he's causing harm to these creatures.
I think magic has a cost, and that's I like that they're kind of playing that in, and it might just be for the breadcrumbs trying to lead us to Sauron.
Yeah,
but I feel like that's just they're going to start toying with that idea of magic having a cost, and I like that. Okay. I've always liked stories that put a cost on magic, because with great power comes great responsibility. It's a great line. It should apply across all fandoms. But part of that responsibility is that you don't get to do fantastically huge things without some payment of some kind.
Okay.
Whether it's personal or of the things around you.
Yeah, and Celebrimbor said earlier, all creation requires sacrifice. which I thought
that was
an
such a
interesting
good
line.
line. I really loved that line.
Yeah. I mean, right down to human creation, right? I mean, the giving birth to a child is
Right. As I'm like 8 months pregnant right now, I'm like, yes, it really does.
I knew that would be, really relevant. So I also think with the Meteor Man, the talking to the fireflies again evoked Gandalf talking to the butterfly on top of Orthanc and Peter Jackson, which again, I think is a misdirection sort of thing. Although to connect him to the wizards, like he feels like one of the wizards. So, yeah.
He's definitely an Ainur, I think. Yeah. One of the angelic beings, whether he's good or evil.
He's also muttering something. He's saying mana and ure.
Yeah.
And I was looking that up. It kind of, it's something to do with fire. According to Tolkien Gateway, it says it means what is heat.
What is heat?
So that's kind of, I heard someone on my Discord also said it might be referring to some kind of secret fire, like fire or secret.
Oh,
so I thought
Gandalf
that was
says,
really
"I'm the servant of the secret fire."
Right. So that made me wonder. Also, I mean, that could be a mistranslation, but that kind of got me wondering, what does that mean?
I like the fact that they've thrown in this sort of mysterious figure. It really, because all the others are kind of they fall into types, they fall into areas we sort of expect, and then we have this other figure. And when you have a Tolkien-esque story, you need a wizard, right? The Hobbit has wizards, the Lord of the Rings has wizards, and so having a wizard with the elves and the dwarves and the hobbits and the men. It works. It fits, and so I kind of hope that's what it is. It's one of the wizards, one of the Astari, one of the Ainur, the Amaya, and we'll see where that goes from that. Anything I didn't cover? Any last thoughts you want to mention from your own notes? If not, I will wrap things up here. Again, I would give this a good grade, like these first 2 episodes. I'm a little weary of what's going to happen, but I'm kind of curious to see where it goes. I'm optimistic. Let's put it that way. I'm optimistic. And
I think one thing to look for too is next week we get the directorship of the person who has the honor of the final episode. So Wayne Chiep is doing the next 3 episodes and then the final episode. So what we've seen now is
of the season
of the series, or of the season. So 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 it's what you're going to see next is probably the big story. So we've gotten some introductory stuff here. You're probably going to get a big story next episode and for the next few, and then the final episode will be this next director, which that's typically the way they do it with the showrunners and directors.
Right. The director of the big final climactic episode, if they direct anything else, it's probably connected to that.
Right.
And Numenor next week, probably, based on what happens.
I would think so.
There's a trailer or a trailer out for episode 3, and it looks like they are going to Numenor.
Okay. Because that's the that's the ship at the end, right? That they're okay.
I mean, assuming, but it does play the Numenorian theme as the ship pulls up.
Oh, okay.
I also saw on IMDb, I know that these might not be totally accurate, but we might get more flashbacks in the coming episodes because it looks like Will Fletcher, who's playing Finrod, is in 7 episodes this season.
Oh, wow.
And that could be just totally, like, I know IMDb isn't totally official, but that got me very excited because I would absolutely love to see more Finrod because I thought he was a really good actor and he did a great job.
Gondolin. Sorry.
There's just so much. We gotta spread it out. We gotta spread it out over 5 seasons, right?
Yeah. I'm hoping we get a flashback of Elrond's actor playing Elros, his brother who founds Numenor.
Oh,
that would be
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, that would be incredible.
Yeah,
there's so much to look forward to.
Yes, I think that's the bottom line. Is there's still a lot of potential, still a lot of hope, despite whatever niggles and problems we might have so far. There's still a lot to look forward to, and I think, and there's a lot of good themes unrolling out here, and that we're going to keep looking for those and dig into those because it is Tolkien. It is, the greatest work of English literature. So that's my opinion anyway. All right, let's wrap things up. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Middle-earth, including Jonna D, Cindy D, Christopher K, Catherine N, and Lavinia S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Middle-earth and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them at sqpn.com/give. This is Dom Bettinelli, CEO of StarQuest. I need to ask for your help, but first, I want to thank you for listening to StarQuest and supporting our mission of exploring the intersection of faith and pop culture. We've added 9 new shows since 2019, including, most recently, The Secrets of Middle-earth, just in time for the new Amazon streaming series. And we have plans to add even more, but the network needs additional resources. We need to bring on more audio editors, video editors, and production equipment, including video equipment for Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World and new shows we have in the planning stages. If you value this show and the other great shows on StarQuest, we need to hear from you now. If you're not yet one of our monthly patrons, please become one. And if you're already a patron, please consider increasing your monthly donation. There are many special patron benefits we'd like to give you, and you can learn more about them by going to sqpn.com/give and clicking Become a Patron. Your support at this time is crucial, so please go to sqpn.com/give today. That's sqpn.com/give. We'd love to hear what you thought of the first 2 episodes of The Rings of Power. You can let us know at sqpn.com/Middle-earth, on our Facebook page, on our Twitter. You can send an email to middleearth@sqpn.com, or visit our channel on the StarQuest Discord server at sqpn.com/Discord. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing that next episode of The Rings of Power. Until then, Thomas Sanjurjo, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Middle-earth.
It's been great.
Thomas Salerno, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And Kaitlyn Facista, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Middle-earth on StarQuest. StarQuest wants to hear from you. We're conducting a survey of our audience. That's you, to help us in our planning for the future. Please take a moment and visit sqpn.com/survey. We'll be selecting 2 participants to receive an Amazon gift card as an expression of our thanks. So visit sqpn.com/survey today.